Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to the 5th instalment of the Data Fam Community Jam. My name is Sarah Bartlett. I'm a Tableau Zen Master and a Tableau Social Ambassador, and I'm also a co-leader of this event. We put together this series of events because we know people are craving connections. There's obviously no other in-person events going ahead at the moment, so we thought it would be really nice to have this kind of virtual community event taking place every week. The Data Fam Community Jam is supported by the Tableau Fringe Festival, which was founded by Emily Kund, as well as the Tableau themselves. So I want to say a big thank you to Emily Kund, Kevin Flerlage, Alex Wolchek, and Lorna Brown, and of course Jordan Scott from Tableau for all of their support in putting these events together. Today we have 4 great presentations. Each one will last for about 20 minutes. We'll take one question after each presentation, and if we have time, we'll also take some questions at the end. If you have a question, please post it in the Q&A box, and we'll keep the chat just for the chat only. So if you do post any questions in the chat, they probably won't get answered, so please do use the Q&A. This event is being recorded, and we'll share the recording on the Tableau YouTube channel next week, as well as on social media. We'll share a link with you using the email address that you registered with also. So first up today, I'd like to welcome Tristan. Tristan is a Tableau Zen Master based in France. You may remember Tristan as being the IronViz champion in 2017. He now works as a freelance data viz developer. Over to you, Tristan.
Hello, everyone.
Oops.
Sarah, I think, or someone, the person who, yes, thank you.
There you go.
I can now share my, perfect. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for the introduction. My name is Tristan Guevin, working as a freelance and also part-time as a database engineer for Augury. And today the presentation will be like how sharing a few secrets on how to build good dashboard. As Sarah, you probably told, and maybe you noticed from my accent, I am French. I like bouldering and travel, which is a bit difficult right now. I love food and data visualization, which are totally okay right now. I don't like pie chart, and in France we call them camembert because we like cheese. I don't like grasshoppers, even if I tested them recently. It was quite not that bad as I thought. And I am quite bored by the current lockdown, but happy to participate to this kind of events. I started using Tableau in 2015. 2 years later, I was, yes, as you said, on the R&Vs. And after 2 books, I am now speaking as a Tableau Zen Master. And this experience, and from the first dashboard I built in 2015 to today, I wanted to share some of the things I've learned on when I build my dashboard and share some of those secrets. So the main question we will try to answer is how to make a good dashboard and what makes a good dashboard. But first, the first question we need to answer is why do we visualize data? Because I think it's also important to understand really the root of why we do that. So if you consider those 4 tables, which have all an X and Y column, if we just look at statistics from those tables, we can say they are mostly similar. The X and Y have the same mean, the same variance. X and Y have the same correlation. And if you plot the trend line equation, you will find the same. So from a statistical standpoint, you can say they are basically the same table. But if you visualize the data, you can see that they are telling really different stories. And for me, that's really the power of data visualization, is to not just look at overall statistics, but really try to find the stories behind each point and what the data is telling us. So just for the information, this is called the Anscombe square. So why visualize data is to understand the story behind, but how to visualize our data. And for that, Elijah Mix made this visualization showing 2 spectrum. On the first side, you can have the Stephen Few school, which is where data visualization is precise, numeric, clean, generally seen as a skill, like things data scientists or analysts will do. And on the other side, you will have work from David McCandless and the information is beautiful award, which is more artistic and more as a vocation. And the aesthetic is the main focus. So of course, for me, and when I look at Tableau Public, I can often see that people are in the right middle. Like it's really aesthetic and it's also clean and informative. But there is a third path that I don't advise you to take, is to make just crappy dashboard like this, where it's not aesthetic and it's not useful. So the question is, how to make a good dashboard, how to not take that path of doing something that is not good. But first, we also need to define what is good. What is a good dashboard? And for that, we can have a lot of criteria, like it's aesthetic, it's truthful, the analysis is good, the color good, or the font. And there are like many things that can help to make a dashboard good. So we'll focus only on some aspect today, because of course, we will need much more than 20 minutes to cover all that. And I wanted to share with you a few things, and most importantly, how I choose to design the dashboard that I made during the R&B's final, because I really try to make this one particularly good. So just for the reminder, I had 20 minutes to build a dashboard live. So of course, we had the data beforehand, so it was mostly like practicing to recreate it in 20 minutes, which is not the most difficult part. But what is really difficult is to sell your dashboard to the jury and to the audience live, and selling something that people just discover. So when I worked on this dashboard, and I tried to figure out what should be my final dashboard for the R&Bs, I looked at my past work and tried to see what worked in the past. So this is one of my first dashboard I published on Tableau Public, and it was for the R&Bs, the first European R&Bs, and it's about beer in Europe. So you could select your country, and you had a few information. So the first line is always general information, and the second line is always focused on the country you selected, so the country you are from. And you had a few information about beer consumption, beer production, and breweries. And every time the country you select is highlighted in black. The second dashboard, and the previous visualization was a viz of the day. So I think, okay, maybe this one is a good. The second dashboard, I made it for the R&B's feeder. It's this dashboard that gave me my tickets to the final. And the dashboard starts by telling a story of a data explorer, and you wake up in a jungle and you have no memory of how you got there. And you have a story in 4 chapters with different analysis on the rainforest, the species, the deforestation, and the endangered species. At the end, you have a trial that forces you to look at the different information in the dashboard and click and filter to unlock the last chapter of the story. Another and final example, this is something I did for a French competition in Toulouse about how to go to work and with car or bike or trains, things like that. So the mean of transportation. And I first focus on the people who are using car and people who are not using car. And at the end, I asked the question, and you? And people could say where they live and where they work, and see how many people are doing the same trip by car, and if it was doable by bike, and what are the cities those people could reach by bike. So I was like, those 3 dashboards were quite successful in terms of like and things like that. So I said, what is the common trait between those dashboards? What makes them good? And if I put them there and I remove the color, I try to focus on what is the similarity. So first, I try to make them understandable. So quickly, you could understand what is the topic and what are we going to talk about in those dashboards. The second part is about making them interesting. So by teaching something to people who are using the dashboard, once they have understood the topic, then you can try to teach them things in the dashboard. And finally, the last part is to make it personal. So make it personal, and currently I'm sure everyone has looked at dashboard or visualization about the COVID-19, and I'm sure everyone looks first for his own country, and that's normal. So when you make the dashboard personal, you make it more interesting for the people who look at it. So I try to apply those three main elements to my dashboard for the RMVs. So first, making it understandable. The first part, the left part of the dashboard, is just that. So with the title, Housing Market Roller Coaster, you understand that you are going to talk about the housing market, and you can see the big picture showing the house value evolution during the three main periods: the bubble, the crisis, and the recovery. So it was really easy to enter into that dashboard and understand what was the topic. So to make a dashboard understandable, you need a context. The second part is to make it interesting. To make this dashboard interesting, I looked at the state-by-state timeline and the evolution of the housing market in each state. So the state in blue were the state where the price were increasing, and the state in red were the state where the price of house were decreasing. And I use an animation to try to show that live and show how we were entering the crisis and how all the state, all the house value were decreasing in every state, particularly in 2011. So that's the second part, try to make the dashboard interesting and to teach something. And to do that, you need a good analysis and a strong analysis. The third part is to make the dashboard personal. And to make this dashboard personal, it's all about the right part of it. I ask the question, what about you? And I show the median house value evolution, the percentage of house increasing and decreasing, and the current median house value price. And you are able to select your state and your city to see what is going on, what was going on in your state or city. So for example, in the state of Washington here, you could see that prices were always higher. And for example, that the most expensive city at that time was Yarrow Point in Washington. To make a dashboard personal, I didn't find a better those three things, context, analysis, and personalization, it's like CAP. And for me, every dashboard needs a CAP, the CAP, a context, an analysis, and a personalization. But is it enough? And I don't think it's enough. Of course, there are many other aspects that how you can improve a CAP. It has a context. We're talking about the profit. The profit there is in blue, as in the bar and in the line. So you understand quickly, okay, we are going to talk about the profit. It has an analysis because we are looking at the profit by subcategory and the profit evolution. We have some analysis. And it is personalized because I can select a region, my state, and I can also click on a subcategory to try to find things that are interesting to me if I'm running this kind of business, or if like I'm in one of those regions. But like I said, it's not enough. And for each worksheet, as you know, in Tableau, or it's at least it's how I think about Tableau, one worksheet is one idea. One worksheet should answer one question that you are asking yourself. And it's not enough to just answer the question. Once you have the answer, you need to try to find if there is a better question that can help you make the worksheet better. So for example, the first question there was, what is the profit by subcategory? That's a good question. But once I see this, I can find better question, like this is the overall profit. Maybe it's more interesting to look at the most recent profit and the current state of the profit by subcategory. So for that, I will just create a calculation and look at the profit in 2019, which is the latest data, the latest year available in my data. And if the year of order date equals 2018, then I take the profit. as you can see there are bookcase tables and supplies that are negative. And if I take the profit in 2018, I have now also machine. So this is something I didn't saw before, but seems like in 2019, we were losing money with machine. So this is interesting, but is it enough? And again, I can ask another question. Okay, what is the comparison between 2018? So to do that, we will duplicate this field, edit it, change it to 2018. And you can use a reference line. So I will put profit in detail, go to analytics, choose a reference line on each cell, and decide to show profit in 2018 with a black line. So this answer another question. Like I can see now the subcategories that are worse than last year. And I can see that machine are worst. I can see envelope also, and this is something I didn't saw earlier. And to help me see more easily what are the subcategories that are worse than last year, I can create a quick calculation, like 2018 is bigger than 2018. Sum of profit in 2018 is higher than sum of profit 2018. So this will just answer true or false. And I can put that in color. And by just changing the color to like highlight when my categories is worst, take Seattle Gray, this one. Then I can quickly see that there are 6 subcategories that are worse than last year. But again, I can still go further. And if what is really interesting to me is the difference between the 2 years, then I can simply remove that trend line and do a final calculation to look at the profit difference and look at the sum of the profit in 2019 minus the sum of the profit in 2018 and decide to plot that. And now I have an information that I didn't have before, is that the machines is the subcategory that has performed the worst among all my subcategories between 2018 and 19. To finish, I can display the label for this and choose to match the color so I can easily see them. I can rank them from the worst to the better because I really want to highlight those ones. And in terms of format, because the positive number are like plus something, in this case I made plus $4,000, I can go to custom and add a little plus in my format. And if I put it again in label, now I have like plus 11, plus 52. It makes a bit more sense. For the profit evolution, we can have the same question. I can have an idea that seems that my profit is evolving, is like growing. But if I compare like 2019, those 4 quarters, I'm not sure that if in total I was better than in 2018, because I have like this really good data point in the 4th quarter of 2018. So I'm not sure which year was better. So to answer that, I can simply put the order date in color to have each year as a different color and decide to show the months. So now I have 4 lines for each year. And if I want to see if I perform better during the entire year, I can choose to do a running total. And now I can easily see that 2019 was a better year in every month compared to the other one. And to make it better in terms of color and attributes, I can put that in size to make the most recent years a bit bigger. And I can use the color to put 2019 in a color and the rest in shades of gray, like this. And finally, I can also put the year in label and match the color. So now I have really the focus on 2019 and I can compare the year at the end. In my first part, the the biggest numbers, as we say. I can remove the profit and filter this in 2019. Also remove the different color that we have and just put it everything in gray. And because in our dashboard, the focus is on that difference, I can select the measure name and I could take profit in the 2 years and the difference, say okay. And of course, remove my filter and put 2018 after 19. And in terms of color, I can put that in black to make it more visible. Back in my dashboard, I just need to add this biggest number, number 2 there. Oops, go away. Okay, while it's going away, I will add the 2019 profit analysis. Yes. Come on. And this one, I will select entire view. And I can rotate the label there. So I went from a dashboard that was not, that has that context analysis and personalization, but was not telling me a lot of information, to by staying in one worksheet and asking myself multiple questions, to something that is much more helpful. And now if I click on machine, I can clearly see that 2018 was a great year. And it seemed that 2019 was more like the 2016 and 17. And for the tables, I can see that it has always been quite bad, but even worse the last quarter of 2018 and for binder. So I can really try to understand what is going on right now to take better decision with my for my company or for my business. So we have seen the different layout, context analysis and personalization. We have seen that for each worksheet, you need to ask yourself a lot of questions until you find the good answer. And it's not enough to just answer one question. You need to continue to push your analysis as far as you can. But if I look at everything that could make a dashboard good, we have only covered the layout and the insights. And there are many, many other ways that you can try to make your dashboard better. And just by attending to this Data Farm Community Jam today, I'm sure you will learn many other things, and keep watching them and keep coming. Thank you. Merci, as we say here in France, for listening. I hope you have learned a few things. I will stop sharing my screen and look if there are some questions.
Thank you, Tristan. That was fantastic. I really like the whole CAP framework that you shared, and the notion of asking more questions of your data and trying to really draw that information out. A few people have asked some questions. I'll just pull one out for you. Just a second. Someone that asked, from your experience, what is the best way in terms of learning new visualization types and being creative with your dashboard design? How did you find, how did you improve your skills and learn that kind of thing?
Tableau Public and Twitter. The best way is to engage with the community, to follow all the community events that exist. The most famous, the Makeover Monday, but also what you run, Iron Quest, This for Social Good. There are so many good community, community, not events, but
initiatives,
initiative.
projects,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, can help you to find new ways. And also, of course, just Tableau Public. There is a Viz of the Day that every time is amazing, and you can, someone shared today on Twitter, make your dashboard available to download, and I totally agree with that. All my dashboards are available to be downloaded, and that's how I learn. When you see something that you want to reproduce, or when you see something that is interesting, download it, try to understand how it has been done, but don't publish it as your own. Please don't do that. But yeah, really spend time on Twitter, engage with the community, go to Tableau conference, go to your local Tableau user group, and just look at what's been done.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say if you are sharing things on Tableau Public, please make them downloadable so other people can download them and learn from like how you build things. All right, thank you. Okay, next up we have Katie. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so Katie is a Tableau social ambassador and used to train people on Tableau in her previous role. She now works on the people team at CBRE, but outside of work, she loves traveling and catching up with her Tableau community friends. Okay, over to you, Katie. Let me just stop sharing. Oops. Can't hear you very well, Katie.
Sorry, let me see if I can adjust that. How's this, Sarah? Any better?
You sound really distant still.
Okay, sorry, everyone. Let's see if we
Put your mic down. I think, is your mic up?
Good call.
Hello.
No wonder. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Alrighty. And also a big thank you to everyone for having me today. I'm excited to be able to share this content with all of you because it's something that's really helped me to improve my design style. Tristan just taught us a lot about, having that cap for our dashboard. And I think when we look at dashboards, we say, well, what looks nice? What is something that will catch my audience's attention? And one of the things that's helped me to do that is learning to love these layout containers. And it's been a long journey. So I am a social media ambassador for Tableau, and I'm very proud of that. But my secret is that I have no design background at all. I haven't taken a design class. It's all kind of picked up from the community and from seeing those examples. Now, for my hobbies, my side projects, I really love cross-stitching. And I think one of the reasons that resonates with me is because there's a pattern, there's a layout, and you know that if you follow those guidelines, you'll end up with something beautiful. And when we think about what it takes to become a designer, and I use those words very carefully, the same way that you wouldn't call a home chef, or excuse me, a home cook, the title of chef, I think that designer has some weight behind it. It has some experience. It has maybe some professional training even. So I'll call myself an accidental or aspiring designer. And one of the things that's helped me to really formulate those skills is learning about these layout containers. The first thing that we need to understand is, why do we need them to start off with? Tableau is relatively easy. It's meant to be drag and drop to build things in your dashboard. But I want you to consider an example where instead of only having two charts side by side for division and account, I want to add a third. But I want to make sure that it's sharing the space, that everything is sort of equally positioned. When I pick up my third worksheet to drag it into the dashboard, I can place it to the left or right, to the left or right, but it doesn't really share that space very well. So the tiled layout is helpful for us to snap things into place, but what if I wanted more control over that area? We want to consider what layout containers are. So what you'll notice is that we are on the dashboard screen. We're only going to see these layout containers when we're building a dashboard. And I like to think of them as placeholders, areas that we've sort of ripped off that are going to contain the items within them. But the most important thing to me about these layout containers is how we orient the objects. So if I choose to use a horizontal layout container, that means that I'm going to stack these items from left to right. But more importantly, it means that I'm controlling the width of an object inside of that container. I'm controlling how wide that item is. So for example, if I wanted this bar chart, let's say to be exactly 100 pixels wide, that is something I could control if it were inside of a horizontal layout container. And same thing with our vertical layout containers. They allow us to stack items top to bottom in the container. And as you might imagine, they allow us to control the height. How tall is the object that sits inside of that container? So let's think back to our example. We've added in age as our third worksheet in this sort of line or area. But we can see that they don't share the space the same. They kind of have different widths across the view. If we added them into a horizontal layout container, which we can find those dashboard objects, those containers in the bottom left corner of our dashboard pane, we would then be able to add objects inside of it. So of course, our first step is to left click on our horizontal layout container and bring it into the dashboard. You can see here that I'm using a tiled layout, but we'll talk more about floating later. And it doesn't really matter at this point where we put the container. The other tip that I'll give you is you want to make sure that when you drag a container to the dashboard, it has enough space. Sometimes I've noticed that these containers will come in and they'll be very small. And when I try to add an object into that container, it isn't placing itself inside. What you notice is that right now, the account worksheet would be to the right of the container or to the left of the container. And I know that because of the outline. When you're working with a layout container, you're going to see that darker blue outline around the object. Whereas when you're working with a dashboard object, like a blank or a text box or an image or a worksheet, that surrounding highlight, that border, is going to be gray. So a main concept to think about is that gray objects go inside of blue containers. If I give this container a bit more height, or if I needed to stretch it, maybe I give it more width. Once that container is large enough, then it makes it easier to drag items inside of it. The second really helpful tip that's been given to me is to put a placeholder inside of that container. I like to use blanks, but you could use an image or a text box if you wanted to. Really, this step is just to put something into that container so that you don't lose track of it and so that it makes it a little easier to add other objects. So I'll pick up my blank item in the bottom left corner of that dashboard pane and drag it inside of our horizontal layout container, focusing on the fact that it has a blue border. That's how I know that I'm successfully adding the item inside of the container. So our blank goes into the container, and it is going to fill up the entire space. It almost looks like the blank has replaced the container. We'll take a look later on how we can be absolutely sure where that item landed. But one of the other things to note is that when I pick up division, and the way that we're going to drag these items around the dashboard is by clicking on the worksheet and then selecting its gray tab at the top to move it over. When I pick up division, notice that I can place it to the left of the blank inside of the container. I can then pick up my account worksheet. And what's important is seeing that dashed line. This means that account will end up between division and the blank. Now, finally, with our age sheet, I could place it to the right of account. I'll just show you what it looks like if I put it all the way to the right-hand side of that container. All 4 of my objects, 3 sheets and 1 blank, now live in the container, but I would ask myself, how do I know that? How am I certain? A helpful tip for understanding where your container is to double click on the tab of any object. So if I double click at the top of my blank object, I'm going to see that blue highlight, that blue surrounding that shows us where our container lives. Now, I made a joke earlier on our first slide that I have a slight pixel problem, meaning I really, really like things to be the same size and aligned correctly. I remember sitting in the audience Tableau conference when the 10.3 distribute evenly feature was announced. And it seems like something so small, but that was a major game changer for us. Because I do the math, and I can look at the 1100 wide pixel dashboard, divide that by 3. Okay, so that's about 366. I don't have to do that with distribute evenly. If I double click my object to select the container, I could then choose the drop-down arrow in the upper right of my container, and I can say distribute contents evenly. No math, Tableau does it for me. What I need to remember now is that I don't need my placeholder anymore. And when I choose the X upper right corner of that blank, everything distributes perfectly. So I think it's really helpful that Tableau's been able to give us that feature, and it definitely saves me some time when I'm building. One of the very first use cases of a layout container that I ran across was to add in a title across my dashboard that consisted of maybe an image for our company logo and then some sort of dashboard title. If they're stacked left to right, we're going to be using horizontal. So I'm going to pick up a horizontal layout container and place it at the top of my dashboard. Remember our best practice, I'm going to add in a blank to that title container, making sure that I see that blue outline. Then I'm going to bring in my image or my logo for my company. So bottom left corner, I'm picking up my image object to bring into the container. I know that for this particular image, I want to fit and center that item so that it fits the given space appropriately. And just note, be sure to think about alternative text for dashboard accessibility for your users. Next, I could bring in a text box if I wanted to add that dashboard title. Or in my case, I have a dynamic title that includes an updating date. So I'll pick up my title worksheet, drag it to the right of my image. But things look a little oddly spaced. First of all, I see that my dashboard title worksheet has the title up at the top, the header. So I'm going to right click on the object to remove it. I don't need it in this case. But remember that key component of working with a horizontal layout container is that I can control the width of an object. So because this icon is inside of the container, I can now click on the icon. I can choose the drop-down arrow in the upper right corner, or I can just right click on the object and I can select edit width. And I know that I want this object to be about 80 pixels wide. I know that I'm finished with my blank. I don't need to add anything else to this container. So again, I'll use the X in the upper right to get rid of that blank, and the rest of my title fills in perfectly for the remainder of the view. So our horizontal layout containers control that width within the view. We also have our vertical containers, which help us control the height of objects. One of the design elements that I like to add is a separator in between my title and the rest of my viz. And I usually like that separator to be about 3 to 5 pixels tall. But again, to control that height, the object needs to live in a vertical layout container. I mentioned that we have a way to sort of find different objects in the view. In the item hierarchy, you can see that we start with a tiled container, which has both horizontal and vertical components. We don't get to control the height or width on either. So I want to make sure that my new vertical container fits inside of that original tiled container. And just as a note, in Tableau 2019.1, we did receive the ability to rename these dashboard zones, which I find really helpful for kind of understanding where I'm at within my layout. So we're going to do some movie magic, and we're going to add a couple of pieces here. Our vertical container goes down the entire left side of our dashboard. We bring our entire horizontal title container into the vertical. We're stacking them top to bottom. We can bring our under construction text box. We can drag over our division, age, and account container below our text. And then finally, for our last piece, our team lead, job title, and years of service, when I try to drag this container in, remember, I didn't put a blank for this one. I missed that step. And so now it's becoming a little tricky to put that horizontal container where I want it inside of the vertical. So the blank would be there to help out in this case, so that I would have that horizontal dotted line across the bottom. But since it's not, we don't have to fear. I can always put this container in the wrong spot of the vertical lineup. So if I just pick up my last 3 charts, and for now, place them on top of division, account, and age, I can then reorder the objects inside of that vertical lineup. I'll just pick up division, account, and age. I'll drag them on top of team lead, job title, years of service. Now, our last piece we talked about, our blue divider between the two, our blank. I like to use a blank because I can control the background color to make it match my theme. So I pick up a blank, I drag it below my header for the dashboard. But what I want you to notice is that these blank objects come in with a padding, which we can find in the layout tab, of 4 pixels on the top and the bottom. That means that the minimum height that I can choose for that object is 9. A way to work around this is if I remove the padding, if I make the padding 0 all around that separator, now I can select to edit the height to whatever size I want. So if we would have tried to pick a height of 3 pixels before changing that padding, Tableau would have told us that we couldn't do it. We definitely could speak a lot more about padding, and hopefully we'll have something soon for all of you, working on something with Mr. Caesar out there. Looking forward to that. But for now, let's take a look at what this blank looks like with a 3 pixel height. I can change its background color, and there we go. We've got our divider line. So there are plenty of other options whenever it comes to formatting. Inside of these containers, we can control their borders, which might give us some outline as we're seeing here. Or because we can control that width and height, I can even add in images that act as separators between our sections on the chart. Last but not least, in Tableau 19.2, we've been given the opportunity to save some space on our dashboard by collapsing these containers. If I decide to show the filter, let's put in our filter here. If I decide to show the filter for this worksheet, by default, Tableau places it all the way to the right. But remember, these containers work as both tiled and floating objects. So if I select my blue outline for my container and I make it floating, I now have the opportunity to make this container collapsible. Once an object is floating, once that container is floating, Tableau 2019.2 gives us the Add Show Hide button. And when I select Add Show Hide, my result might look a little like this. We start the dashboard with this collapsible item. We show the filters or whatever object we want, and then we can close them down when we're finished. So these layout containers have been tremendously helpful for me whenever I've been aligning and learning more about design in Tableau. Remember that you can control the height and width of those objects, and also remember to help save some time by adding those temporary blank items into your view. Thanks everyone for having me, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you, Katie. That was fantastic. I think a lot of people have been blown away by like some of the like knowledge bombs that you just dropped. And there's been a lot of comments around how people love the look of your dashboard. So,
oh, great. Thank you.
Got loads of questions in the Q&A, but there is one that a few people have asked. So.
Sure.
People have said sometimes they have a problem where they have a layout container, they've added things into it, but they have this empty space at the end. So like, you know, when you have like the lines, like kind of like a shaded area, which you just can't use, and they can't figure out how to make that object fit that space. How would you overcome that problem?
Okay, so one of the ways that I've seen that's been helpful, there is a push pin icon on each object in the upper right corner, right where you would find the drop down arrow or the X. Sometimes if I unpin, which basically changes the height or width of that object, it fills in the rest of the space of that layout container. So that's one option. Check for the filled in, the solid push pins and click those. Or make sure you remember to remove your blank placeholder in the container.
Yeah. All right, that's great. I'll try that next time. Thank you.
Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. All right, so next up we have Maria Brock. So Maria is a senior in college and a Tableau student ambassador. She was actually one of the first student ambassadors to come in last year. She teaches Tableau workshops to students at campus in the normal world, and she tries to help them become more familiar with Tableau. Over to you, Maria.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. Let me share my screen here.
Sure.
And
okay, you're good to go.
Awesome. Okay, so hi everyone. I'm so excited to be presenting today on student ambassadors and the Tableau student guide. So what all of that is and what it means. So before I start in, let me do a brief introduction. I am a senior at George Mason University near Washington, DC. And I'm graduating in less than a month, so I'm super excited about that. Unfortunately, we won't have an in-person graduation, so I'll be doing a Zoom graduation in my backyard. And I'm acquiring a Bachelor of Science in Economics, and I'm minoring in data analytics. So my focus is more in data analytics as I'm more interested in that, but my whole degree is in economics. Currently, I am interning at Lovelytics, which is a consulting company across the nation that helps customers and clients with Tableau, Alteryx, Mapbox, and more. And as Sarah mentioned, I'm also a Tableau student ambassador, which is going to be what my talk is centering around. So let me run through a brief agenda of what we're going to do. So we're first going to talk about who are the student ambassadors and what they do in their year. And so I know that a lot of people might not know exactly what ambassadors are and what student ambassadors are. And then we'll move on to what this year's cohort of student ambassadors did, what we accomplished, and what our day-to-day life looks like as an ambassador. And then also going through benefits of using Tableau as a student and how to make the most out of it. And then, of course, because I know that probably most of my audience is actually professionals, I'm going to also include a section of how student ambassadors can help professionals and their organizations, and also run through what this Tableau student guide is and how it can help you. So first moving on to who are the student ambassadors. So as a rundown, Tableau chooses ambassadors and Zen masters every year to serve the community. So people in the community are nominated by other people for their work that they've done throughout the year, outreaches on social media, or help with the forums, or just designing brilliant visualizations and tutorials. But the main focus of ambassadors and Zen masters is to help the community. We're there to serve, and we're there to kind of act as a voice within the community and work with the Tableau employees in helping just create a really good product for everyone. So students are the newest and the fifth branch of ambassadors. So usually ambassadors consist of professionals that have been using this in their day-to-day lives and have been using it for many years, but the academics teams decided to create this new branch of ambassadors for students. And so student ambassadors are tasked with teaching Tableau on campus, with hosting workshops, with acting as a liaison between campus recruiters and businesses, and just generally representing Tableau on campus, and also creating kind of like a data community within the student body. So this year, there were 22 student ambassadors across 4 different countries. So the USA, the UK, Singapore, and Australia. And one of our biggest accomplishments that happened was within the first semester, so this is probably, I think, 4 months, we taught over 1,000 students. So 1,000 students got their licenses to start using Tableau, and were able to kind of join the community and learn more about it. So for those of you who are students who are listening to this presentation and who may be interested in becoming an ambassador, I'll run you through exactly what this year looked like. So when we first, because we're the first year of student ambassadors, we didn't exactly know what was happening or what was going to happen. So luckily I can present to you what our year looks like. So in the beginning, we had a boot camp kickoff. And so some countries got to have an in-person boot camp for 2 days. I know that the UK had one, and I believe that Singapore had one as well. And so that was 2 days of training from Tableau employees, talking about different resources and setting up mock training sessions to kind of learn how to navigate a classroom. And so the US had a virtual boot camp for a day, and that was really beneficial because they gave us a lot of resources. And so after the boot camp, then planning began. So they kind of just let you go out on your own. And of course, there's so much support, but they give you a lot of flexibility in how you want to approach your campus and approach exactly how you want to run all the stuff that's going to happen. So for me personally, my year started out with meeting with professors. So I started to talk with my data analytics departments. I started to talk to different clubs and organizations and raise awareness. So this meant going to department leads and going to professors and saying, hey, I have this free workshop that I'm going to be running. It's free for everyone. There may be pizza. So please let your students know. And a lot of professors would give extra credit to students who would come to these workshops, and other clubs would host it during their meetings. So overall, I found a lot of interest in actually in speaking with the students. They were really interested in it. And then the workshops kicked off. So for me, a workshop would look like a 1 hour to 1.5 hour event where I would sit down with about 30 students, and they would download their student license, which is free for students. And we would run through the very basics. So that means connecting to your data source, building your first visualization, putting it all together in a dashboard. And then by the end of this workshop, they would have a pretty basic comprehension of how Tableau works, and were given a resource package to kind of move on their own. So, and then the rest of the year, it was just kind of working with the workshops, forming connections, and then most of all, speaking with Tableau employees and representatives in the academic team to make sure that we were able to provide the best resources for our students, and also kind of branch out to different colleges. So I personally worked within my college mainly, but I was also able to connect with different colleges that I would have presented with if this pandemic hadn't happened, and also did a virtual presentation for the University of Arizona. So for those of you who may be interested in getting nominated, what do you get out of it? So first of all, it's a really big resume booster. I'm able to put down on my resume that I have been able to acquire a leadership position to really teach Tableau to students, to make these connections and act as a leader within my campus. You get access to internal channels, so you're able to kind of have a direct pipeline to the Tableau employees, which is really, really helpful. You have access to the great minds within the community. So the ambassadors and the Zens, they're all there to help you, and able to share resources. So it's been a really big blessing this year that I've been able to connect with a lot of people within that community. And then mentorships. So this year we were actually assigned mentors within the community. So my mentor this year was Brittany Fong, who's a user group ambassador, and other students had Zen masters as mentors or other ambassadors as mentors. So it was a really great way to be able to form that relationship and to have a mentor to kind of help you go there. And then you can also just kind of talk to them about jobs and building your network and all this type of stuff. And then there's also higher opportunities for internships. So I know that this year the academic team reached out to us and said, hey, we have Tableau internships available. Let us know if you are interested in these internships. And if not, you can kind of tell your students that these internships are available. So my last point to students before I move on to the professional side is how to get the most out of Tableau in college. So as a student, I know that we can be very swamped with a lot of work going on, but if you are a data analytics major or a minor, or even just kind of wanting to get an edge with some sort of data skills, definitely make the most of it, because Tableau licenses are completely free for as long as you are a student. So saying that, it is what you make of it. So as a student, you are very valuable to companies. You are the talent that is coming out of college. So the more that you know about Tableau, the more you're going to be able to have this edge on other competition, and the more that college or companies will want to hire you. The second way to make the most of Tableau is to build a Tableau public portfolio. So if you don't know this already, Tableau has this public space that you can publish visualizations and build a portfolio for yourself. So this allows you the chance to show that you actually know Tableau, you have these visualizations that you've already made, and you can provide something to show at an interview. So if I was going to go to a company, I could sit down and they're like, well, do you know Tableau? And I'm like, heck do I. here's my portfolio, let me show it to you. And then third would be to join a local user group. So there are so many user groups across the world, across the countries. Whatever country you are in, there is probably a user group that is happening. And of course, nowadays there's virtual user groups. So all the more reason to join one. It is a great way to see who is working with Tableau in your local area. And I know that with my user group, which is the DC Tug, Brittany will always ask companies if they have anything to, like, any questions or any announcements that they want to make. And more often than not, people will be like, hey, we have a job opening at this company. So it's a really good way to just connect with minds and to expand your network. And then lastly would be to join Twitter. So I know that that's kind of a weird concept to get around, is why would I join Twitter? And that's what I asked myself when I first started. But actually, a lot of the community members are on Twitter, and it's a really nice and informal way to kind of see what other people are making, to connect with people, to start making friends and network. So yeah, and like I said, your network will grow exponentially. I know that mine definitely did. And I've also gotten a lot of new ideas and help from joining Twitter and joining the community. So moving on to kind of more of my professional audience is how student ambassadors can help you and your organization. So the first thing that I would say to this is that we are in a market that is extremely competitive. And more often than not, companies are realizing that the younger generation and the younger talent is able to pick and choose what jobs that they want. And so students are the incoming talent. And like I said, there's a lot of competition for them. So student ambassadors can help you and your organization access these talents and these minds that are in their campuses. So for me as a student ambassador, I was able to teach about, I think, up to 100 students on my campus. And so I was able to form relationships with them and get together with business fraternities and different classes. And so if someone approached me from a company, I would definitely be able to be like, hey, I know this guy who's looking for an internship, and he's really good. He's, you know, proven that he's really interested in this from our webinars or our seminars. And so I can recommend him to you. And vice versa. I've been able to approach different companies and say, hey, I have these students here and they're interested in jobs or internships, and been able to kind of act as this liaison between companies. So also student ambassadors have a good access to campus resources. And so they have access to professors and to clubs and to different recruiters. And we also have access to the system, so reserving rooms and all this type of stuff. So we can host hackathons, and we can bring in people for roundtables from different companies, or we can help host recruiting events on campus. So I would definitely recommend using student ambassadors as a pipeline between you and your company if you want to access talent. And so the question is, well, how do I know who the student ambassadors are? So if you go on to Tableau, they have usually a article that announces the Tableau ambassadors. You can just say Tableau ambassadors on Google and it should pop up. Know some students there who might be able to work from. So yeah, and so that's that for kind of how student ambassadors can act as a median between you and new talent. So last but not least, I want to talk about the Tableau student guide. So this is both for students and for professionals. But it is a website that I created, which has up to 30 articles all about how you want to, or how you can get started with Tableau. So I would encourage you to pull it up right now at thetablewstudentguide.com, and I'll run you through it. So when you go to thetablewstudentguide.com, you'll be able to access pretty much, if I say so myself, everything you'll need to know with starting out with Tableau. So this runs you through first getting started. So this is how to download Tableau, how to get your license, how to connect with your data, and what it means to examine the workspace. And it goes into pretty good detail of what the columns mean and what the data structure looks like and more. Then for our next section, we have building basic views. So we have quite a few posts on running you through like building bar charts, building scatter plots, what continuous measures versus discrete dimensions mean, and everything that you need to know to kind of get a grasp of what this means. Next, we have Tableau Public. So this will run you through creating your public portfolio, how to publish from desktop to public, and gives you different resources like Makeover Monday and Project Health Viz and different data sets that you can access. Then you'll get to connecting with the community. So this is talking about who the data fam is, the ambassadors, the Zens, how to connect on Twitter, how to build your network. And then it goes into resources and tips. So this will show you how to get started with e-learning, different data sets that you can use, what it's like to take the specialist exam, and just a lot of different resources that's in this concise one-stop shop. And then at the very bottom, we have student interviews. So this is mainly for our students, which is I've reached out to students from across the world just to know how they're using Tableau and how they got started with it. So again, this is the tablewstudentguide.com. And this can be not only used for you, but also for people in your organization. So I have had people reach out to me and say, hey, this has been so helpful. I've just kind of sent out this link to the community within my business, and it's been really helpful for them, so I don't have to spend hours and hours trying to answer questions. You can just send them this website, and it should be a good start to getting them started with Tableau and just kind of getting a one-stop shop where you don't have to think about it, you just know it's all in one place. And then here's my contact information if you want to connect with me on Twitter or shoot me an email with any questions, feel free to do so. And that is the end of my presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. That was fantastic. There's been a lot of questions coming in around like the ambassador program, just in general, like how do you become an ambassador, and questions like that. I think you covered all that in later on when you went to the ambassador site and kind of showed the different types of ambassadors that are out there. One of the questions we have is, how long were you using Tableau before you became a student ambassador?
So I was using it for about 2 months, I would say, and I got nominated during my internship over the summer.
So you were nominated by your school or by
one of my coworkers, actually.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. So there's a few more questions coming in, so I'll let you cover those off in the Q&A.
Awesome.
And I'm just going to share my screen once more. Okay, so our last speaker today is Mark Bradburn. Mark is a sales consultant with Tableau, a former Tableau ambassador, and a former leader of Cleveland Tug. He's the founder of mentoringmeetup.com and the tableaudatafam.com. And he's probably the most passionate person I know in the Tableau community. So we're super grateful to have Mark with us today. Over to you, Mark.
All righty. Where is it?
Okay, you're good to go.
Good, excellent. So hi and welcome. This is the worst case scenario survival handbook, dashboard requirements edition. So today I'm going to take you on a beginner's journey to surviving some of the worst things that could possibly be asked. to do when you're developing with Tableau. So it's really a beginner session about when you're getting requirements. So the title of this is the Survival Handbook, but it should really be called How to Be Creative. And I hope by the end of the next 20 minutes, you feel empowered to survive some of these worst case scenarios. So as Sarah said, my name is Mark Bradbourne. I've been in data warehousing, business intelligence, and analytics for 22 years, almost 23 years at this point. I have a certification from the Data Warehouse Institute in business analytics. I have a certification from Tableau. I did join Tableau about 9 months ago. And as I saw a bunch of names that I recognized in the chat, I did create the escape room. So if you've done e-learning, you probably recognize this photo and my name. So thank you for all the kind messages I get, by the way, on LinkedIn. It's really cool to get those. All right, so let's go. So let me introduce you to Mark. It's not me, this is Mark with a C. So he just started his first job working in data visualization, and he's super excited because he gets to use Tableau. So he's literally so excited he could run through walls. And it's mainly because he's been practicing and learning. So he's been doing things like Workout Wednesday, he's been doing Makeover Monday. He even started a blog called Sons of Hierarchies. Wait, no, that's my blog, never mind. And he's been reading really good books about how to develop effectively with Tableau. So he's going into his first requirements meeting and the boss starts spinning. Here are the requirements for our new dashboards. So Mark inevitably walks out of the meeting feeling like this, that the struggle is truly real. He's a little deflated because they've asked to do things that aren't best practice and they're not the best way to use Tableau. Or any data visualization tool for that matter. So the struggle is truly real. But what Mark is armed with is knowledge. He knows that these situations call for creativity. And if nothing else, he's armed with these two things: knowing the appropriate chart type to use and how to employ pre-attentive attributes to make his dashboard shine. Now, if you're not familiar with the phrase pre-attentive attributes, those are the things within a data visualization that the human mind recognizes in 250 milliseconds or less. Things like color, position, shape, and we'll kind of explore some of those as we go. So let's review some of the most common asks, and I mean Mark with a C, has come across. So consider these the 7 deadly sins of data visualization. I need to export. I need the be-all, end-all dashboard that answers every question that I could possibly have. Can you make it look like Excel? Well, what I want is a specific chart type. Please color every blank. It might be state, customer, what have you. I want to be able to filter everything. And then lastly, I need a stoplight. So I need a red, yellow, green scorecard or dashboard. So let's start with exporting to Excel or PowerPoint. This one hurts my heart the most because that's generally the first requirement. You know, so why are they so mean? The first question you need to ask is, what are you going to do with that data once you export it? And if the answer is, I paste it into Excel and I've got a bunch of macros and it produces this other visualization, please resist the urge to club them to death. Ask for that final dashboard so that you can actually build the thing they need, not the conduit to have data delivered to them so they can copy and paste it into something else. For some organizations, this is a huge deal for data governance. They're pulling data out of the tool and putting it somewhere else. At that point, you know, you don't know what they're doing with it. You don't know how they're modifying it. People show up in different meetings with different things. So you really want to try to avoid this at all costs. So work with your stakeholders and try and get them to avoid exporting to Excel. Now, the PowerPoint export, that's a given. You can explain to them that they can bring these dashboards up in meetings, but sometimes, you know, they just want the PowerPoint to send out. So show them the really cool way that they can export Tableau directly to a PowerPoint deck so that they're not copying it, pasting it. At least you're saving them some time from that respect. That still hurts, but it's better than nothing. So I need the be all end all. There is no dashboard ever created on this planet that will answer every possible question that the data will provide. It's just not possible. There's no chance. So get your user to focus on a few critical questions. Those might be, the things that they have to know at a moment's notice, things that they go to sleep at night worrying about. Once you answer those, you can move on to the next thing. But providing them with this giant data source that is connected to this giant dashboard is going to be a really ineffective way to share insight from data. If that person is an analyst, now I wouldn't recommend this to a C-level or a director, but if they are an analyst and they have access to web authoring perhaps, maybe you teach that person to fish rather than giving them the fish. So you give them the data source and then they can go explore and ask their own questions. Also, if they make the claim that it needs to be all on one screen and you're scrolling 6 screens worth of real estate to actually see all the data, argue that it's not actually all on one screen. Don't be afraid to break things apart into subject areas, into pieces of information, because sometimes you put the wrong pieces of information on and you're actually going to cause confusion. They might draw a false correlation. It will give the users a better experience whether they know it or not. The reason I see so much struggle here is there's just a lack of understanding on consumers on how to use the tool. So train them, give them the dashboard, and then shoot a 5-minute screen capture video talking about how they'll actually use the dashboard, how you use a filter, how you can mouse over and see a tool tip. Knowledge is power, so make your users very strong. So can you make this look like Excel? Over 20 years, I have gotten a screenshot like this and said, in whatever reporting tool, can you basically recreate this Excel spreadsheet? Please don't recreate Excel in Tableau. This is not what it's for. You really need to educate your users on the power of actually visualizing data. Tristan pointed this out very eloquently with the quartet. And sometimes it's just easier to show them with their own data. You can give them the data crosstab, but don't make it their first view. Make them work to get to that view. So don't do this. Do something like this. So, and this workbook is actually, it will be on my Tableau public profile for you to download if you want to see some of these examples. Do a simple highlight table. So here, we're still looking at a crosstab, but by using color as a free attentive attribute, we're drawing attention to the highs and lows. Push them a little further, maybe a bar chart showing the sales and the color showing the profit ratio. Very quickly, they can see, oh, look, tables in the East from quarter to quarter, it's always, or tables in general have always been problematic. They're drawing insight much quicker than they will out of a Excel crosstab. Maybe you can use position as well. So now we're looking at both color and position instead of the color and length. So now we can see very quickly, which subcategories are performing worse than others. Or maybe even just a generalized heat map on profit ratio. Sales might be irrelevant and they don't realize that. Because if something is losing money, whether you're selling it for $5 or $500, you really want to understand what the profits are about. So understanding what the critical question is, what they're trying to derive out of that data, is probably the most powerful piece of information you can get, and in return, the most powerful piece of information you can give to them. So draw upon your knowledge to get better requirements. Yes. I want this specific chart, the pie chart or the viz of the week. I work with a lot of finance customers, so I see a lot of pie charts. And if you're plugged into the community on Twitter, you'll see some Makeover Monday trends where all of a sudden it's a lot of Stankies or a lot of Merry Meccos or the bar chart races. It's fun to experiment. but some of those can be difficult to produce. And for those who do not have a high level of data literacy, they can be difficult to understand. So no, let's stay away from them telling you what type of chart to provide, and use your understanding of the appropriate chart to use to drive better decisions. One of the best tools that you can use is the visual vocabulary. This is Andy Kriebel's recreation of the Financial Times visual vocabulary. And based on the way you're trying to show the data, it gives you options of the best visualization types. So I dive into part to whole. I'm going to pick on pie charts because I do work in finance, and they are the food group. But here, part to whole, you can see you've got your food charts, your pie charts, your donut charts, and your waffles. If you're looking at a single number, the waffle chart for a percentage is actually a pretty decent way to visualize it if you want to give it more than just a big number. You've got your sunbursts and arcs. Again, when you get into curvature, the human eye doesn't really do well in estimating those things. Tree map might be a good option. Stacked and proportional stacked bars and column charts work well. Waterfall and Venn are very specific use cases. So if they're like, I want a pie chart, and it looks something like this, where you've got 15 colors and 15 slices, and it's almost impossible to derive what's what, it's just too much. So don't do this. This, I said, a tree map might be an alternative that you can use to replace that pie chart. But here's the really interesting thing. This one actually represents the data well, but it's not part of the part to whole from the visual vocabulary. I show this truly to drive home the point of it depends. It depends on what you're trying to show, what the granularity of the data is, and ultimately the situation. In this case, the bar chart, as I like to call it, is the Swiss Army knife of data visualization, and it saves the day. Now, I recommend this book to answer every data visualization question ever asked, the It Depends Definitive Guide. This book does not actually exist, but just bear in mind that when you're making chart choices, it truly does depend on what you're doing. This one I see a lot in the wild, where they have chosen to do a quick filter, and the quick filter has thousands and thousands of items that they can select from. Filtering is great, truly, but filtering by high cardinality fields or fields that have a ton of values are really problematic. It can actually cause performance issues on your dashboard, especially with a live connection, as it's going to query every time that dashboard is opened, every time the filter is used. Users will have to scroll and scroll and scroll to find the item they want if they don't know what to search for, and it can really kind of lead to a bad experience. If you have a second filter and the two filters for some reason come in conflict, you're actually going to lose your entire dashboard and it'll go blank. Obviously, we don't want our users to experience that, so let's try and avoid filtering by everything. Instead, let's think about how we can be creative. One way to do that is by offering sets. If you're not familiar with sets, get familiar with sets, because sets are awesome. Sets are dynamic groups. So in this case, I created a set for VIP customers. So this is showing me the top 10 customers based on their profit ratio. You might look at, perhaps you look at the worst, and the string filter that has all of the customers in it. When in doubt, if you've got filters on your dashboard, I suggest that you use the Tableau Performance Recorder to test your dashboards. A lot of people don't know it's there. It's under the Help menu in Tableau Desktop. This tool will measure the performance of the workbook, use it like a user would. So click on things, hover over things, navigate between dashboards, select filters. When you stop the Performance Recorder, it will give you a Tableau workbook that will show you how it's performing, and then you can actually troubleshoot and make your Tableau dashboards perform better. So yes. This one hurts too. Taste the rainbow, right? It feels like I spilled Skittles all over the screen. I remember the first time I used Tableau back in 2012 on version 8, I always thought it was fun to grab something and throw it on color and then quickly remove it because it was horrendous and unusable. Color is a pre-attentive attribute that is extremely powerful. And it's also the one that's probably the most commonly abused. So be really careful with color. Science has shown us that the human mind can remember 5 colors, plus or minus 2, depending on the human, before they start having to go back and refer to the legend. So let's not color everything. So looking at this, it might be North Carolina, it might be Oregon, it might be Kentucky, might be Illinois. And as I've said, each state, you've gone to the legend and looked to see if it's the right shade of pink. This is really demonstrating the problem here is that you just don't know. So in these situations, you want to move to a higher level. So you might want to group these by some sort of attribute that groups them together. So in this case, I'm using region. So now I can see the central region, the east region, and the south region. From here, you can give them the ability to drill down into that further detail to identify the states that might be problematic. One other thing that I like to do when I get into the use of color is actually using a parameter. So here, I'm using a parameter based on state to highlight just the state and have everything else be gray. So I can look at California's performance and I can look at New York's performance. By simplifying the colors, we can make our visualizations way more effective. So yes, let's do that. So speaking of color, the stoplight is a very common ask. So once upon a time, I worked for a CFO who was colorblind, but he did not share his secret with me. But he did ask for a stoplight scorecard, red, yellow, green. So I went off and I dutifully did the work. And when I delivered it, he's like, this looks great, except I have no idea what this is. And I was very confused. And then he mentioned to me he was colorblind. Now, maybe it was just the shades of red and green I used that really hit him in the hard spot of his deficiency or what, but I had to go back and kind of reassess. And since then, I've been really sensitive to the red and green combination because it is the most common color blindness. It's, I think, 1 in 8 males and 0.5% of the females. So one of the things that I've started to do is focus on what's important. So you either focus on the good or the bad, but don't do both. And anytime you use color, not just red and green, but anytime you use color, I suggest testing it for accessibility. So let's not mix red and green. Here's an example where I've given the option to highlight the good, everything neutral, or highlight the bad. This is a great option. It gives the user flexibility to actually focus on what's important to them, because some people might want to focus on the good, some people might want to focus on the bad. So the importance, though, like I said, is testing. On the left-hand side of the screen is an app that I use called Sim Daltonism. It's an iPhone app, and I know that there is an Android app. I just haven't used it, so I can't speak to it. But it uses your camera to take a picture of an item, and you can change the type of deficiency that you're testing for. It's a fabulous way, and if you're ever in a meeting with me and you see me pull out my phone and point it at the screen, I'm not taking a picture of the slide. I'm probably testing for accessibility because, like I said, experiencing that from your CFO makes you really sensitive to that, and I try to encourage people to test for color deficiency when they can. The other way is if you're in Tableau server and you're using the Chrome web browser, there's an extension called Spectrum. Spectrum allows you to simulate color blindness in the entire browser. It's a fabulous tool. I've used it for years. I highly recommend using that as you publish things to Tableau server to make sure that your dashboards are accessible. So if there's any questions, I know we're kind of at the end of our session here today. Feel free to tweet me with the hashtag #WorstCaseSurvivalViz, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Other than that, I just want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank Emily and all of the organizers of the DataFam Community Jam. It's been an awesome thing to see during the pandemic here. It just kind of magnifies how great a community we have, and appreciate everybody's support of this initiative. And I hope you all stay safe, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mark. I think a lot of people resonated with the things that you were saying in the chat. Like everyone was just like, yes, I know what he means. This has happened to me. So that was really nice to see. Just a quick question that came in. Somebody asked how they can access the Tableau Performance Recorder that you mentioned.
Yes, so once you're in Tableau Desktop, if you go to Help in the menu, down towards the bottom of that menu is the phrase Start Performance Recording. Once you do that, you use your dashboard the way that you would. Once you kind of use it the way the user would, or the way that they consume it, you can then go back up to Help, and it'll change from Start to Stop, and you stop the performance recorder. It will launch a new Tableau window with your performance recording workbook in it. And the thing that I usually do is I'll look at that, I'll go make changes, I'll save that workbook, and then I can do a compare and contrast pre-change and post-change to see if the things that I'm doing are actually changing the performance of the workbook.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's a really great resource that I use a lot. So before
Yeah. And sorry, I just saw something pop up. It's available in all versions of Tableau that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and you don't need any special access other than desktop, right? Everyone
Correct.
Can use it. Yeah. All right, thank you, Mark. I'll just give you a few minutes just to work through the last questions in the Q&A. And while you're doing that, I just want to say that we don't have an event next week. So our next event will be on the 14th of May. I've included the time zones at the bottom, but that will be 7 p.m. in the UK, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11:30 p.m. in India, and 5 a.m. in Australia. The recording for this event will be shared with you by email, and we're also going to post it on the Tableau YouTube channel as well. As I said, you'll all get a link to that. The event for the 14th of May isn't live yet, so what we'll do is we'll actually email you when that is live using the email that you provided when you registered, and you'll be able to click through and register to that event. And as always, it will be recorded, so if the time zone doesn't suit you, you'll be able to watch the recording back. But thank you again to all of our presenters, and thank you to everybody that joined today. I hope you found the presentations useful. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.